Hello and welcome to the Evercade Retreat. My name is Joke and today I'm talking about fighting games on the Evercade. With the Neo Geo Arcade Collection 1 coming out in July, which has King of the Fighters 2000 on it, well, that's easily going to be the best fighting game on the Evercade so far. But is that because all the fighting games on the Evercade are bad, or simply that it's just a very good fighting game? Well, I'm going to try and answer that question while discussing my thoughts on the fighting games currently on the Evercade. As a caveat, I'm excluding anything locked to hardware, so no Street Fighter 2, no Capcom fighting games. I think it's safe to say if I was including those, the Street Fighter Alpha games would be the best on the Evercade. As for how they compare with King of the Fighters 2000, well, I suppose that's really preference, isn't it? Maybe? Yeah, whatever, it's hard to say. I've played the Alpha games a hell of a lot. I haven't played a huge amount of King of the Fighters 2000, but I do like what I've played. Anyway, let's get on with talking about the current fighting games on the Evercade. So I'm going to start at the beginning. In cart order, I'm going to go in order of the numbering of the carts, as I believe the first 10 carts pretty much came out at the same time. So first up is Karate Champ from the Data East Collection 1. I was a bit borderline as to whether I was going to include this because although yes, it's a one-on-one fighting game, it's more of a karate competition. It's almost more of a sports simulator than a proper full-on fighting game. However, it's close enough, so I'm including it. Being an NES port, this doesn't have the looks on its side. Being an older game, it's clunky and really, unless you put some effort into it, you're not going to get it. It doesn't have the fluidity of later fighting games from the Street Fighter 2 era and onwards. It's very much a product of its time, and I imagine most people aren't going to give it that much time. They'll probably bounce off it. I certainly did at first. I did manage to find some fun with it and quite enjoy it to a degree, but this was within the specific context. I was playing it as part of KD's challenge. Doing it in a competition with others, I managed to find the fun with it, get good at it, and it pushed me to go on with it. If I hadn't done that, I probably wouldn't have given it any more time of day. So really, this one stands up as a time capsule, as a mark in history in the fighting game genre. That said, ranking it as a fighting game, this is definitely one of the lower tier ones. Also on Data East Collection 1 is Fighter's History, which is essentially Street Fighter 2 with different characters. It is a complete and utter rip-off of Street Fighter 2 and brings almost nothing new to the table, except for having your clothing and being able to break that. But again, that's a very minor thing. It doesn't have a huge impact on the gameplay. Only it's so close to Street Fighter 2 that it went to court. And although Data East won the court case, partly due to another court case which involved Karate Champ. Anyway, the point is, it's a rip-off Street Fighter 2. They pretty much retro-engineered a Street Fighter 2 unit and built the game up from what they learnt from that, or something along those lines. Nearly all the characters are pretty much analogues of characters from Street Fighter 2. The special moves are extremely similar, and I mean, it's so similar to the original Street Fighter 2 that it's pretty much as good as that. I do think it falls a little bit short of the original Street Fighter 2, but it's close. And Street Fighter 2 is a classic for a reason. Being almost as good puts this in pretty good company. Anyway, moving on to the next collection, which is Interplay Collection 1, we have Clay Fighter. And in this bit I'll also talk about Clay Fighter 2 from the Interplay Collection 2. Funnily enough, Clay Fighter is a fighting game in the Street Fighter 2 mould, only uses stop motion animated characters, wild and wacky characters at that, to fight against. It has a lot of personality, it has a unique visual style to it. However, the gameplay doesn't really hold up to Street Fighter at all. These games, you can have fun with them, mainly in multiplayer. As single player games, they're not really that good. Despite having light, medium and hard kicks and special moves much like you'd find in Street Fighter, it doesn't all come together. It doesn't feel as fluid, the characters don't feel as good to play, nothing's as satisfying, and it just lacks all round. It's a mediocre fighter at best, but this is raised up with some really nice sort of presentation and, a unique style to it. But it doesn't change the fact that it is still very mediocre, or they both are. Moving on, we get to Weapon Lord from the Namco Collection 2. Now, one of the biggest downsides of this is the fact that this will not play on a BS. So you're limited. Unless you're in an alpha, you're pretty much stuck to playing it on handheld. And fighting games really thrive on multiplayer, especially this one because it's bloody difficult. The enemy AI will absolutely obliterate. That aside, it's a very good looking game with a unique style. Being a weapon based fighter, it's almost like a proto Soul Blade or Soul Calibur. Although it's safe to say, as fighting games go, it is not of the same calibre as those. Haha, I made it funny. I have heard this is much better on the alpha, but yeah, I don't have an alpha, and it does have a good presentation and it seems to be trying to do things differently, but it doesn't really come into being an actual enjoyable, satisfying game, but being something that I want to like or I admire for what it's trying to do rather than actually enjoy. Okay, moving on, we have Creepy Brawlers from Mega Cat Collection 1. This is another one I wasn't sure whether I should include, but it is a one-on-one fighting game, or rather boxing. It's, like Punch Out, but the bad version. Again, I like what it's trying to do. It's kind of trying to give you that nostalgia feel, and it's admirable, but it doesn't really come together. Really not much to say here, and the next one's a very similar game as well. Coming from Pico Collection 1 is Power Punch 2, essentially a Punch-Out sequel, where you're fighting aliens. Pretty much everything I said about the last game. It's like Punch-Out, but not as good. It's a poor sequel, tries to do something different, but again, like Creepy Brawlers, it's not very good. Moving on to Indie Heroes Collection 1, we have Super Homebrew Wars, which is effectively like Super Smash Brothers, but just as lame as that really, and that's when people stop paying attention. I know the Smash Brothers games are popular, they're really not my jam, I don't like them, but I don't really like this either. It's fun for a few moments while you have a little play with it, but it doesn't really do much. It's very, very basic and probably makes the Smash Brothers games look fantastic in comparison. So moving on to Technos Arcade Collection 1, we have Mania Challenge, which is a wrestling game, so close enough to a fighting game. This is pretty good for what it is. Again, it's very much for its time. Wrestling games, well, I've never been a huge fan of them anyway, but obviously they don't have the same fluidity. It's a different type of fighting game, but yeah, this is fine for what it is. So moving on to the Team 17 collection, where we have 2 more fighting games. So let's start off with Full Contact. This is a fighting game sort of in the ER Kung Fu mode. This is prior to Street Fighter 2. Well, I think it came out after Street Fighter 2, or maybe in a similar time, but it's before Street Fighter 2's presence was really felt on the gaming industry. It's okay for what it is. It has got its certain old school home computer fighting game charm, got some nice graphics and presentation, but it's not a very good game as a whole. The challenge bits where you have to essentially waggle your joysticks or move back and forth repeatedly, they're just near impossible on the Evercade. Yeah, it's not particularly great. And next we have the Amiga's answer to Street Fighter 2, or one of many answers to Street Fighter 2. And it's Body Blows. Of course, being made for one-button joysticks, it didn't have the diversity in buttons to allow for a fully fledged fighting system like Street Fighter 2. And they tried to do something different. And, well, it is different. Does it make for a good game? Not really. I think graphically it does some nice things. This being the AGA version has some nice backgrounds. The character sprites are well enough done, but they do lack a bit of... they feel like Poundland Street Fighter characters. Actually, they make the characters from Fighter's history seem interesting in comparison. Maybe I'm being a bit harsh. It's not a terrible game for where it came from and its origins, but it doesn't hold up today. Moving on to Pico Collection 3, we have Punch King. This is like a GBA or Game Boy Advance version of Punch Out, and it's okay. It does feel a bit rough around the edges and unfinished. It's got some nice sort of presentation. Characters are suitably cartoony, but the gameplay is a bit flawed and it gets a bit frustrating. It's okay, but nothing special. We're getting nearer the end of this now, so moving on to Pico Arcade 1, there are 2 here. We have Dragon Master and Master's Fury. If these games look the part, they do have some nice graphics. The sounds of that are generally quite good, although there's a lot of things that are very derivative. These are very much knockoffs of Capcom and Neo Geo fighting games, but they're quite janky and rough around the edges. The movement on Dragon Master doesn't really feel that good. Some of the mechanics don't really work quite right, and the hit detection isn't the best either. Master's Fury fixes some of these things, but also makes some of them worse. Some of the hit detection seems horrendous. It seems even more derivative of other games, and none of the characters stand out. But the same can be said for Dragon Master either. These are not good fighting games. They look like good fighting games, and they're clearly trying to be, but they fall well short. And to be perfectly honest, I'd rather play Weapon Lord or Clay Fighter over these two. And finally, we have Galaxy Fight Universal Warriors from the Sunsoft Collection 2. This is another very difficult fighting game, and it's not too bad. There's definitely things to like in here. The way that it's continually scrolling rather than being a limited playfield. There's some decent music. The character designs are interesting, although the look of them is very pixelated and the animation doesn't feel as smooth as perhaps it should be. I'm guessing this is because it's a PS1 port. Maybe they had to make cutbacks because of the low RAM that system had. But I haven't played the arcade original, so I can't really compare. Even so, this is probably the second best fighting game on the Evercade at the moment, the best being Fighters History, but I think by quite a large margin. Naturally, I think it is safe to say that King of Fighters 2000 will take the crown once the Neo Geo Arcade Collection 1 is released. However, being the first of the Neo Geo collections, I think it's safe to say we're going to see more of the Neo Geo fighting games, and there are a number of good ones. There's also ones that are good but obviously not amazing, or they were good for their time but they were superseded by better ones. Which ones we're going to see on carts, who knows. But I hope we're at least going to see things like, Samurai Showdown, Fate of Fury, Art of Fighting, maybe World Heroes, and of course Gary Mark the Wolves. And I hear Last Blade is good too. But like I said, it's a lot of fighting games. I don't think we're going to see all of them, or maybe we will in time. And maybe something's going to be locked to hardware. I guess we'll see. What are some fighting games you would like to see come to Evercade, whether they're Neo Geo or not? Personally, I would love to see the Mortal Kombat games come to Evercade. I know they don't really compare in gameplay to, the best of the Neo Geo and Capcom fighting games, but they definitely have their own charm. I would also like to see a number of the 3D fighting games come along. Hell, I'd like to see Street Fighter EX Plus Alpha come to Evercade. I enjoyed playing it on the PS1, and yes, I know it doesn't really compare to the others. I'd also like to see maybe Star Gladiator, Soul Edge or Soul Blade, whatever you want to call it, depending on region. Tekken, obviously. I'd imagine a lot of the Sega ones might be out of the question, but again, some of the Virtua Fighters or Fighting Vipers could be entertaining as well. I know many of these are going to be pie in the sky. Actually, saying about Sega ones, one I'd love to see, although again, I know it's not a fantastic series, but I have a lot of nostalgia for it and I'd enjoy it for what it was, and that's the Eternal Champions games. And I just realised I missed a game from the ranking the current fighting games on the Evercade, and that is Way of the Exploding Fist from Pico Collection 1. Well, I say I missed it, you're not really missing much out on it. It's essentially it's a lot like Karate Champ. It moves more fluidly, but the same, I suppose, caveats apply. And to be perfectly honest, the version on the ZX Spectrum and Commodore 64 was superior to the port for the NES. So it's not very good, but you can have some fun with it, I suppose. Anyway, I think that's enough waffling for one video. I hope you've enjoyed my little insights to the fighting games on the Evercade, because from here on I think it's going to get a little more interesting and exciting on that front, and that can't be a bad thing. Not unless you absolutely hate fighting games, I suppose. But anyway, like I said, it's enough rambling for one video, so I will see you in the next one.